Alright guys, welcome to another episode of Schmattz Outdoors. So I'm out here messing around with muskrats a little bit. I recently found out that a lot of people are stretching their muskrats too wide because their wire stretchers are wider than they need to be. And I'm going to show you kind of what that means here in just a second. I found this out. I went on FHA's website, for Harvesters Auctions website. They recommend that a muskrat board is 5.5 or 6.5 inches wide at the bottom of it and 24 inches long. They give measurements on what the width needs to be as you go up the board. I checked the wire stretcher that I'm going to show you. I checked it and it's very close to what their recommendations are. And then I have what a standard muskrat stretcher, all the rest of them I have except for this one are way wider than they need to be by a lot. Like they're almost 8 inches in width at the base. And I feel like that's gonna short us on length when we're going to sell our muskrats because it's gonna be stretched that much too wide. All right, so this stretcher here is 6.5 inches at the base, like they should be. I have a big muskrat on there. You could see, so right there is 17 inches. And you can see, looking side to side, this is easy. It's about 17.5 on each side when I measured it. And I'm actually pulled this about as tight as I can get it pulled on the bottom. I'll probably put a clothespin on each one of these just to make sure they stay there. Okay, this stretcher here is what I feel like most of us are using. I have about 40 stretchers that are just like this, same size. And if I get my tape measure, you could see that guy, get it hooked on there. We're over 8 inches in width at the bottom. I mean, you can tell the difference in width between that one and this one. I feel like this muskrat's going to be way shorter on this stretcher. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut you guys off. I'm going to take the muskrat off of this stretcher, put him back on this stretcher, and then I'll show you what he looks like. Alright guys, so I have this muskrat on the wider stretcher, and I'll show you. You actually do lose a fair amount of width on this guy. So you can see I got my tape measure hooked at the top. You can see 17 is now way down here, which is about, I would say, in line with this. I figured almost a full inch. I feel like if I hold that up, we're at like 16 and maybe just a little now on both sides. So I ended up losing a full inch in length on this muskrat by putting him on a stretcher that was too wide. But I feel like these are the stretchers that everyone has. So I'm actually going to look at this summer. I'm going to actually figure out how I can flex these in. You know, if I got to clip this part of it off or whatever, so I can squeeze this in as much as I possibly can to get these down at least to 7 inches, if not closer to 6.5 inches, so I can gain my full length. Because that one length, you know, might be $1.50 or $2 in value, and it's the exact same muskrat. Alright, I think that's all I have. Like I said, I just wanted to do a short little video on that to show you guys kind of the difference. I'll be making all my stretchers, make sure they match as close as I can to the 6.5 inches at the bottom for next year. And you know, when you catch, I had 300 this year. Even if a few of them would have increased in a length or been close to the length and increased up a length, you know, that's actually a fair amount of money. It could have been, you know, as much as $1 a piece I might have lost, you know, on 300 muskrats. It adds up pretty quick. So all right, we'll quit rambling on. I appreciate you guys watching Schmattz Outdoors. Hit the thumbs up on this video if this helped you guys at all. If not, you know, hit the thumbs up anyway. Leave a comment. I would like to hear what you guys think about this. It kind of surprised me when I learned that this is what was going on. Yeah, and leave a comment, hit the subscribe button. I really appreciate that, and we'll see you guys on the next Schmattz Outdoors video. I showed you how wide some of my wire stretchers were. So what I did is I went through and I sorted them out. I have basically 3 different types of wire stretchers. I bought them all used, so you know, you get what you get when you do that. I'm going to show you what I did. They were all too wide, wider than what the like FHA specs or like any of the ones that I could find where you could actually buy wood stretchers from. The width should be 6.5 inches at the base, and a lot of mine were significantly wider than that. So I ended up losing length. Over a season, you know, you could lose quite a bit of money just by how much length it shortens. You know, if it shortens you 1 length for every muskrat, you know, you could be losing $1 or more per muskrat on the bigger sizes. So we're going to show you, like I said, kind of a step-by-step on what I did to adjust my stretchers. So next season, all mine will be 6.5 inches at the bottom and then at the correct shape. So what I did here is this board here is built to FHA's dimensions. You can see what I did. Good, so you guys can see. So I did, you can see I drew the line. So I drew a center line down my board, and then I drew lines at where the width measurements need to be, and I marked the width. So like right here's one, right here's one, and then down here farther, some of these these are the actual, that one's at 10, 11.5, 13, 14. So these are the actual length of the muskrats, what they're graded at. So like a 17-inch muskrat, that's written that way, but 17-inch muskrat is a 3XL muskrat. So this is exactly to FHA standard. It's a 24-inch long board cut to the correct shape. This stretcher here, these were the worst variety that I had for stretchers. So I have it basically flush on that side. You know, the thing's offset just a little, but you could see how much wider I am on the bottom down here. So if I put a quick tape measure, it's supposed to be 6.5 inches, so I'm hooked there. You could see I am at like 8 1/8 on the overall width of this stretcher. So by putting a muskrat on there, the one I showed in the little video, I lost about 1.25 inches in length from putting them on this stretcher to putting them on, this is a store-bought stretcher, the only store-bought one that I bought directly from a store. It is the correct width at the bottom. And I lost almost, you can see, it's about the exact width that it should be. I lost about 1.25 inches overall in length. It was a 3XL muskrat on this guy, and it was only just hardly a 2XL muskrat on this side. All right, so what I did is I'll show you, so I do have one bought one that is the correct size. So I didn't do anything with that guy, I just left him the way he was. This variety here, what it has is it has this little washer here, and basically this was way out to here, and that let it open up, and I'll show you again. So this guy here, he's at 6.5 inches in width. What I did is, hope you can see that, yeah, there you go. I just pushed the washer all the way tight to here, made a little jig to hold this at the right distance, and then I just took the welder and just put a little tack right there. And basically that's just now this top wire can't slide out any farther. So this stretcher can't get any narrower than or any wider than 6.5, but it actually can get a little narrower. So as you know, if your muskrat dries or whatever, it will squeeze these down a little. So I have about, I don't know, 15 of these roughly. And then once I got them squeezed together, it kind of bent these up a little bit. So I just clamped this in the vise and just kind of grabbed this and pulled it out a little just to make sure that these are straight across. You know, and it kind of, like I said, it kind of tipped them up just a little just by, you know, as you squeeze it. It doesn't show it that well, but as you squeeze it, they kind of angle up. So that's what I did with these. I just put a little tack weld on those, and that actually worked really nice, and the shape is about perfect, matches my board. Without actually, I didn't have to really adjust they are bowed out a little in the middle, but like the nose and everything is pretty darn close to what the standard needs to be. Okay. This stretcher here, you can see about how much I took out of there. We'll just show you quick here. So I took out about 1.5 inches on those, maybe just a touch more, touch less. So they weren't quite as bad as this guy here is. this stretcher here, these only measured about 7 inches when I started. So this is the last variety I have. These have a triple hook on them, which I prefer the triple hooks. That last variety only has a double hook, so don't have like this barb on there, and they don't hook on the Muskrat as nicely. These guys here, I had to adjust quite a bit on the shape of them. You can see I got it so it lines up pretty nice. But to get the width narrower, all I did is I just clamped this in the vise and then just tweaked these out to kind of make this V shape where this used to be straight across. And you can see I have it about perfect width. And then these do have a little bit of play in the bottom, just the way that eye is. So that will let the Muskrat actually squeeze that down just a little kind of as it dries. So I have, again, about, I don't know, 13 to 15 of these as well. And like I said, I had to kind of tweak the shape of them a little bit to get it to match my board a little bit closer, because they were bowed way out like that. And I'll show you on this other variety. But again, that was a pretty simple fix, just bending these down. You have to do both sides equally. If you don't, what it does is like it straightens this side out, and then this side makes a big bow. This side would be straight, this is a big bow if I only bent one side or the other. So you got to kind of bend each one evenly, or they won't lay nicely, or they won't be formed the right shape. Okay, so that's that one. Now this last variety, so this is the last one. These guys are actually an inch shorter to the bend than those other varieties. I don't know why they're made that way, but that was the way they're made. So I wanted them longer, because if I put that on there, so this is a 24-inch board, I could only pull about 21 inches or so, and you can see where that 17-inch line, I actually had, even with them this wide last fall, I had trouble on it with a few of them. I couldn't pull the hooks down far enough to really get my Muskrat tight on these, even with them being that wide. So what I decided to do is I wanted to bend these out, bend this down, and that gave me some extra length. And I'll show you here. This is a completed one, and I'm going to go step by step on kind of what I ended up doing with these. So this is a completed one. I have it laying, you know, about flush there. You can see I gained all that length down to here, so I can actually pull almost 23 inches, you know, if I need to. So I'm way past the line, you know. That'd be a huge Muskrat to ever need to pull it that far. Alright, so I'm going to show you what I did to get from this stage all the way to this stage, and I have a series of them here. I'll kind of explain what I did. So all I did is I just clamped, this was bent down, and all I did is I just clamped this in the vise and just bent it up. I used the pliers on a few of them, but my hands were getting sore, so I just used the vise for them and bent it up, and that allows you to actually unhook them. So I could squeeze that down, and you can see I can get that unhooked. Once I got it, here, actually we'll unhook this one. I'm doing this one-handed, so okay. Okay, so once you unhook a stretcher, you can see how it opens way up. Alright, what I did now is I took a bolt cutter and I cut about right in the middle of this joint, because I tried to straighten these out and it ended up breaking right there anyway. So I cut with a bolt cutter like right here, you know, right in the middle of that curve kinda, and then I did right in the middle of this curve. If I was going to do these again, I actually would cut it off on the straight. That little bit that I gained by that curve ended up being kind of more of a pain in the butt than it was worth. So I would actually cut it off on the straight, and you're going to lose a ½ an inch roughly of length. Okay, so once I cut that guy, it looked like this one here. Oops. Alright, so we're just going to, so you can see how I just clipped it with a bolt cutter there and with a bolt cutter here. Okay, then what I did is I grabbed this guy in the vise like my fingers are showing, and basically just cranked it down, and what that does is it straightened out the corner, kind of flattened the corners down. And then on this one here, obviously I grabbed it, you know, like in the vise like my fingers are, and then just squeezed it down, and that will straighten everything back out. So that should be the next one here. Okay. So straightened out, it ended up looking like that. On both sides, you can kind of see where that one still looks like it's curved a little. What I ended up doing then is I just took the grinder and I just kind of deburred this all the way around. You can kind of see, I hope that that one shined up a little bit. So what I did is I made sure that they were nice and straight, that there weren't still a little bit of a lip or anything on there, because when I get to the next steps, then I can't get that through the little board I made. So once I have it this far, so I have, these are both basically straight rods now. I clamped it in the vise up to where my finger is here. So I clamped this part of it in the vise, and then I just grabbed here and I just bent it around until it was straight. And I didn't heat that or anything. You could if you wanted to. It still left like a little bit of a woo-ha in there, like a little bit of a zig. I just laid it basically on my vise, on the steel back part of my vise, and I just hit it with a hammer a couple times, and you can straighten the little kinks right out of it. Like this one here that I have finished, you can see right here how it's got like a little bit of like a little jog right here. But my, and right here where my finger is, right here is where the corner was. The clamps go right over the top of it. So you can see it was right here. You know, and I just hit it with a hammer a couple times. You know, I hit it a couple times like this, and then I put it on there like this and just tapped it a couple times, and that actually straightened the corners perfectly out. All right, for the bottom, what I did, so they're supposed to be 6.5 inches outside. So what I did is I drew a line out here, and I drew a line out here, and then I just took a drill bit and I measured the diameter of this, and I took just the next size up drill bit. I wanted them as tight as I could get them or keep them, and then I drilled inside my line. So the outside of my hole is at 6.5 inches, and the outside, or from the outside of this hole to the outside of that hole, is 6.5 inches. What I ended up doing actually is we made a stop on my saw, and I cut all my boards exactly the same distance, and then once we got one drilled, we put a stop in my drill press here so I could drill that hole, and then once that hole is in, you flip it around and we drilled that hole, and they all ended up being right at 6.5 on the outside. And then on this side, we just went right in the middle of the board and we measured the very middle of it so it hangs straight, and I drew a 3/8 inch hole because I hang all my fur from my rafters, so then I have nails pounded in. So I drill that hole, so like there I can just hang my Muskrat up like that on in the rafter. And then we just took it on the sander and just sanded off. This is a 1x2, so it's 3/4 of an inch thick by 1.5 inches wide. All right, so once we got these corners all straightened out and kind of tapped so they're straight, you can kind of see like right here there's the little bit of a woo-ha. That's where those corners were. Then I slid the board onto my stretcher. So right now that board can still slide up a little bit. And then what I ended up doing is I slid this board up about, well, so this part of it was way up here, so I slid it all the way up about that far on. Then I clamped this in the vise with about that much of it sticking out, like 5/8, maybe 3/4 at the most, and I just bent them in. So it was probably bent like that far, like 1/4 inch bent in. And by doing that, basically, and then by doing that on each side, it stops my board from coming off the end. And then what I did is I just basically put this on top of my vise and I just tapped these down. I just set this on the top of my vise and then I tapped this and this down until they were flush. So it kind of, because the rod is bent at me, you could kind of see how the rod is actually tipped this way towards, it's pulled to this side of the hole, and that one there is pulled to the opposite side of the hole, and that basically just wedged my board on there. So we just bend these over, I pound that down, and then I basically just laid it on my my wood one here, and then I just bent it as I needed it to get it back so it lined up with this board. And one of the tricks I found, like I had trouble with the nose, getting the nose to line up decent. So what I did is I grabbed like right here and here in my hands and I just pulled out. So it kind of flared it out, but then this part of it bows way out. What I did is I took a 2x4 and I just put it in there like that and then squeezed it. Let's see, I got it about like that. So you can almost see like right here, there's a little bit of a kink in there. That's just from me putting it on there and then squeezing it down. And by doing that, that actually squeezed the overall width back to the width that I wanted it. And basically I just kept playing around with where this was at and squeezing it until I got my board or my wire stretched down or bent down so it lines up with my template. And you can see I have it. They're actually a little bit wide, and I left them like that on purpose because when you put your Muskrat on there, they're actually going to squeeze in, and then as your Muskrat dries, they'll squeeze a little bit more, I think. So all of them are all bowed out just a little on each side. And then like this guy's the finished product, like I said, and on a few of them, I ended up just taking the grinder and just touching up the end of the wire just so they're like that one. Actually, I did. I actually took the grinder and just touched that up and ground it flush with the board. Again, if you don't get them even, so if this side was longer than this side, it actually will like bow your whole stretcher to one side or the other. So as I was tapping these down to slide my board up, I made sure that I didn't go too far on one side or the other, and if I needed to stop, I just ground the wire off just a little on one side or the other. But now that guy is all completely ready to go. Like I said, this one here, basically all I gotta do is just bend it over, and then I'll just pound that board out flush. We'll be right where they need to be on width. All right, I think that's all I got for you today. If you guys have any questions on what I did on any of this stuff, just leave them in the comments below, and I'll try and explain it the best I can, or I'll video it if it's, you know, if I really didn't show something well enough here. But yeah, I think a lot of guys are losing length on their Muskrats because they're not realizing that some of these old factory bought stretchers are way wider than they need to be. Yeah, I guess that's all I got. I want to thank you guys for watching Schmattz Outdoors. Again, leave comments down below if you have questions. Otherwise, stay tuned for the next video.